Vince is still so sad about his recent split that he can barely get out of bed. Neil is breaking up with a girl he went out with for 2 nights while she yells at him for treating her like a working woman. Graham also gets into a fight with his boyfriend, telling him that girls aren't allowed. Mikey also has trouble at home because his wife knows that most of the time when the boys get together, courtesans are there. He stuck the ring on her finger while she slept so she wouldn't want to leave him. Patrick would rather listen to his recordings of stress therapy than hear his wife yell at him because they were meant to have dinner with her parents this weekend. Matt is the last one. He owns a comic book store and gets into fights with little kids over characters that don't exist. Today, he was so mean to the poor kid that someone broke the shop's window. Vince stays quiet and sad. When he finds a picture of his ex-wife in his wallet, it makes him feel even worse. Banksy, on the other hand, is late because he forgot his phone at home. To make things worse, he also forgot his keys, so he is locked out. His friends try to call him, but he doesn't pick up. They think he's being lazy because he doesn't answer. Soon after that, the van they hired pulls up, and the driver turns out to be a woman. Neil calls her Candy right away, which makes her angry. The group chooses to leave with Banksy, who is now in the middle of the road because his van broke down and even a traffic cop makes fun of it. During the trip, Candy tries to cheer up moodily by saying that there are worse things than divorce, like murder, and, strangely, it does make Vince feel better. She's also curious about why they're going to Moodley, which is a small town in the middle of the woods with no way out. Vince tells her that they'll stay at Mikey's grandmother's house while she's gone. Neil says with excitement that in that town, there are 4 women for every man. A few hours later, the van stops all of a sudden because the road is blocked by dead animals that have gone bad and been gutted. At first, the boys are too disgusted to do anything, but when Candy starts working on her own without thinking how disgusting it is, Vince steps in to help. Mikey tells the group that his grandmother is on a hunt while builders work on her house, and they learn that the old woman doesn't know they're coming. PlayStation. Neil has had enough of all this complaining, so he tells everyone to put their phones in a bag and rest. Later, they get to Moodley. While the boys get off the van, Candy puts drops in her eyes because they are red. Even though it's just before sunset, the village seems to be empty. The group starts to walk around, and when they see a football, they kick it for fun, not knowing that it has a bit of blood in it. Graham can't find anyone, so he tells Mikey to break into his grandmother's house to get it ready for their stay while their boys go get a drink. On the way to the pub, Matt breaks off from the group because he is interested in a store called Burning Witch that sells all kinds of gross things. He also sees that all of the campaign posters have been torn down except for one for a woman running for office. This poster is funded by a brand of laundry detergent. Mikey is looking for a spare set of keys under all the gander gnomes in his grandmother's yard, but he doesn't notice the severed hand on the lawnmower. Once he finds the keys, he looks at the fence and sees a red handprint. He looks behind the fence because he is curious, and he is shocked to see a zombie bride eating an interesting. When she sees him, she grabs an axe and starts to chase him. Neil goes to the bathroom at the pub to relieve himself. While he's there, he watches the woman in the next stall drop a lot more blood than her period should. Then he goes back to the group and sees that the air smells bad. The group talks, but they don't know that there is a dead body behind the counter. Since no one will serve them, the group goes back to find Matt and watches as a covered beggar appears down the road. They think about giving her some money, but Sergeant Gavin jumps on her and tries to kill her with his knife. The guys run over to help the woman. Vince tackles Gavin to punch him, but Gavin easily turns him over. Neil also gets involved in the fight. He hits the man in the chest, but Gavin pushes him away. The beggar then takes the knife and cuts Neil's hands with it. Gavin tries to tell Vince what's going on, but Vince knocks him out. Mikey walks up at that moment and smashes the beggar's head with a garden gnome, showing that she is actually a scary zombie. Then Mikey tells them that the village is a small zombie apocalypse and points to the street, where infected women are coming toward them. The group runs back to the van where Gavin is unconscious, only to find that Candy has also been infected. Neil shuts the van doors right away, and the other guys decide to run to Nan's house. On the way, they see a gutted soldier pinned to a fence, which makes them sick. Neil goes up to him to get the gun, but just as he does, the man wakes up and tells Neil that the gun is empty. He also tells them not to go into the woods, and when Vince asks what's there, he laughs. The zombie bride suddenly shows up behind the soldier and cuts his head in half. The group runs away, screaming in fear, and gets to Nana's house, where Mikey has trouble finding the keys in all of his pockets. His friends grab the paint buckets that the builders left behind and start throwing them at the zombies, while an infected hairdresser gets close enough to attack Matt. Vince stuns her with black paint and is able to stop her. Then Mickett finds the keys, and everyone runs into the house. The horde runs away. Vince is mad that their weekend is ruined, and Neil tries to call for help but his phone has no service. When Neil doesn't move, Patrick gives him a wet towel to put on his wound. All of the zombies they've seen are women, so Vince thinks that something in the air is making only women's bodies sick instead of making them bite. Neil looks out the window at that time and is shocked to see a group of crows crowing. Gavin is woken up by a sudden scream, and he tells him that all the men in the town are dead. Matt thinks it must be a viral weapon that got out of hand, but Gavin says that he can't say anything about it because it's secret. As the group asks for more information, the tension rises. Then Patrick says that the kettle is boiling, and everyone sits down for tea like real English boys. It turns out that no one in the town has lived long enough to look for a cure, and most of the horde looks for fresh meat in the woods. In order to get away, the guys agree that they have to get the van back. Neil always says that women love him, so they send him to get Candy to come out. Neil gets Candy to leave the van by making her smell his wound, and the rest of the group runs to get in. When they start the car, however, 2 zombies jump out from behind the back seats. The guys start running again, and Patrick tries to grab the bag with the phones, but a zombie grabs the other end, and they fight until the strap breaks. Then the other zombie attacked him with her axe, but Patrick dodged it and started running toward a sign. The zombie catches up to him and cuts his leg with the axe, but Patrick keeps going and climbs the billboard, where they can't get to him. When he checks the bag, he is unhappy to find golf balls instead of the phones. The rest of the group is trapped in the street by zombies with no way out, but Patrick starts hitting golf balls like baseballs and hitting the zombies to confuse them. Vince and Matt go into a toy store to hide while Gavin, Graham, and Mikey go into a clothing store. Neil picks up the balls that are lying around so he can throw them at the zombies again. He then hides in a house next to the church, but he is knocked out by someone. At the toy shop, Vince finds out that they forgot to lock the door, and he has to fight off a zombie who is coming in. Matt is excited about all the collector versions, but mostly because he found a lot of nitro fluid, which is usually used for radio-controlled cars. He puts some of this liquid on the zombie's hand and then uses Vince's lighter to light it up. Graham watches the zombie burn at the clothing store, but Gavin pulls him away from the window and says they need to stay out of sight. As they look around, they find blood on the floor and a severed head on a shelf. In the changing room, an infected saleswoman sees them right away, so Gavin shoots her with his last bullet. The zombies outside hear the sound of the gunshot, which is not good. Matt, meanwhile, finds some toy walkie-talkies. He puts one on a remote-controlled car and sends it down the street, driving it around the zombie's feet until it gets to the clothing store. Mikey gets the walkie-talkie, and the 2 groups can finally talk to each other. This lets them figure out that Neil isn't with either of them. It turns out that Neil was taken by a zombie, who tied him to a chair and invited him to dinner. The fingers are used to design the cake, and she doesn't think twice about eating them in front of him. Since Neil won't play along, the zombie goes for him with an electric knife and cuts off Neil's finger. Then she puts some cream on it and eats it. At the billboard stand, Patrick stays calm by listening to his meditation records while the zombie uses her axe to chop up the billboard stand. The walkie-talkies help the groups at the store come up with a plan. Mikey puts the chopped head on the car, and Gavin dances at the window to get the crowd's attention. When the door opens, the car comes out, and Vince drives it to get everyone out of the area. Next, Mikey leaves the shop to look for a useful car. He finds a military truck, which means that no matter what he does, he can't break the glass window. When he hits the car out of anger, he accidentally sets off the alarm, which brings back the horde. Mikey has no choice but to hide in the closest building, which turns out to be a slaughterhouse. He goes deeper inside, trying to avoid the bloody parts all over the room. He finds a zombie butcher cutting off people's arms and legs. Mikey is thrown through the window when the zombie attacks right away. Since Mikey hasn't come back, the rest of the group is afraid, so Matt and Vince decide to look for him. First, though, Matt uses the fluid and some toys to make a flamethrower. He also gives Vince a smaller toy gun because they are using jokes from better movies. When they come out, they are surprised to see that the street is empty, but a zombie jumps out from behind to scare them. With the flamethrower, Matt burns her right away, making her run away. The toy also starts to burn, so Matt throws it on the ground, only to find that they've been leaking fluid everywhere, which is causing the fire to spread. By following the trail of fluid, the fire gets to the toy shop and causes it to blow up. Matt and Vince run to the church. The two find out that this place used to be a military base by looking at all the body parts. They use the walkie-talkie to tell their friends to meet them there. The two people then look around the building and find an old lab where clearly horrible tests were done. The men in the clothing store decide to dress up as women so they can get out of the store without getting hurt by the zombies, who only attack men. In the meantime, the zombie finishes cutting the sign stand off and knocks Patrick to the ground. As the zombie chases him, Patrick runs straight to the van, where he finds Candy holding his golf club. He takes it from her, quickly shuts the doors, and uses the club to beat up the zombie that is coming after him. Back to the three people in costumes, they are dealing with a zombie who is becoming too suspicious and hits them. In response, they snap the zombie's head. At that time, Patrick comes along and finds them. He takes them with him to the church. Neil is making fun of the zombie to get it to come closer, and the electric knife cuts the rope. Neil then takes the knife and attacks the zombie before running away. When he gets to the door, he sees that the crowd is coming after him, so he climbs to the roof through a window. From there, he sees the group at the church door. When he tries to wave to them, he leans against the roof, which breaks. He then falls into a room where infected exotic dancers are eating. The dancers all try to eat him at the same time, but they fight over who gets him. This lets Neil get away and go back to his friends. Before the mob gets to them, the group takes refuge in the church. When Matt turns on the computers, the screens show that the whole town is being watched. The politician from the ads shows up and wants to know what's going on, but she hangs up as soon as she sees strange faces. Gavin's watch bell goes off all of a sudden. Phase 2 has begun. Outside, the infected women change and get smarter, faster, and weirder, while Gavin says that Phase 1 is sickness, disorientation, and psychosis. The zombie with the axe starts hacking at the door, and Gavin says he's found a device that controls the experiment. With it, he can send out high-frequency sonic deterrents that hurt both men and women and only work after he goes through Phase 2 mutation. But nothing happens when he presses the button. Gavin starts to worry because he thinks they have no chance, and Neil scolds him because this is all because of the experiment he did for a stupid politician. Matt then finds a box full of wash powder. It turns out that the politician was a delivery girl who gave each house free wash powder with the virus in it. Gavin spits blood and dies out of the blue, showing Mikey's sick Nan behind him. Mikey is upset, but he still has to watch as Matt sneaks up on Nan from behind and beats her up with a golf club. Matt goes to the lab to be alone after what he had to do traumatized him. Vince follows him there to comfort him. But Vince finds Matt dead because the burned zombie killed him. Vince goes to tell the group the news, which makes Mikey angry enough to attack the zombie to get even. While this was going on, Banksy finally got to Moodley, but he didn't notice the zombie in the van. Back with the group, they fight the zombie together, and while the others hold her down, Mikey kills her with her own weapon. Then they see that the crowd has stopped the main door, so they run up the stairs and out of the building. At the end of the stairs, they find a terrifying sight: all the dead men have been piled up to make a nest for the zombies. When something sees them, they run away again. This time, they go into a room to get to a window and get to the roof. Banksy sees them at that moment and brings a ladder that the builders left behind, but the idiot starts climbing it to join his friends. When they scold him, he doesn't believe the story, but he helps them move the ladder and use it to get to the roof next door. Even though everyone is scared of the zombies waiting on the ground, they all make it across safely. Graham, however, is late because he stayed behind to block the door. Some zombies manage to push him and get in, so Graham tries to cross too, but a zombie catches up to him and moves the ladder, making him fall. Graham fell to the ground, and the crowd jumped on him right away to eat. The friends run around the roof and climb down, where they find that Banksy drove here in a tiny rental car. When the strain finally breaks, the group starts to argue about who is to blame. Patrick stops them to say that he wants to live longer. His speech is cut off by another zombie, who kills him right away. The other boys run back to the van, and when they open the doors, Candy tries to attack, but stops when she sees Vince's face. Vince uses the confusion to punch her, and while he and Neil hold her down, another zombie comes up to Banksy and kills him with a broken bottle. Vince goes to check on him, and Neil finally loses it. He throws a punch that knocks Candy out, then yells at the crowd to get more. Before they get on the bus, Vince burns a picture of his ex-wife to show that he's done with women and that if they want a pet, they can get a dog. Vince is no longer sad, so he drives the van out of town and hits as many zombies as he can. But as soon as they get to the road, they hear Graham on the walkie-talkie. It turns out that he was thrown into the nest with the other bodies, and he wants to be saved. The three get back on their feet and get ready to fight with gold clubs right away. In the meantime, Graham finds the system's remote and goes upstairs, where he sees that a wire has been cut. Graham fixes everything quickly and hits a button that turns on the speakers that the military put up all over town. This stops the zombies right away. Then, Graham goes back to his friends, and Neil takes the wheel so he can have fun. He keeps pressing the button to tease the zombies, who can't touch him and can get closer. Then he throws the remote to his friends, but it falls and breaks. When the system fails and the zombies get out, Graham's friends put him in a shopping cart and start running away right away. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more movie recaps. See you in the next video.